All right. Hello again, everyone. Once again, this is the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission. We are here on Tuesday, March 16th. We are going to momentarily adjourn from our special called session that was called for an executive session regarding disposition of real estate. And then we're going to enter our regularly scheduled agenda setting session. So can I have a motion to close our special called session?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Davenport and a second from Commissioner Houle to exit our special called session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. So we are now in our regularly scheduled agenda setting session. We have a new opportunity for public input at these sessions via computer or telephone. We have nobody who signed up for public input tonight. The commission does have access to any of the emails sent through the portal regarding items on the agenda tonight. However, we have a consent agenda that has been reviewed by the agenda review team. That's myself, Mayor Pro Tem Edwards, the manager, the attorney, the auditor, and the clerk. And so that is items 1 through 11. And so now I am here to ask, would anybody like to see an item come off consent? And I recognize Commissioner Wright.
Shit. Item number 5 for a quick question, please.
All right. Make a note of that. Would anyone else like to remove any other item from consent? Commissioner Myers.
Item 6.
All right. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 4 and item 10, please. Okay.
All right. Commissioner Denson.
I don't know if the mayor just said this one because I'm getting some static on my end, but item 1.
Okay.
Just for a question.
Okay. Any others? All right. We'll go ahead and begin with 1 then. This regards wireless facilities and the antennas ordinance. Commissioner Denson, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is a whopper of an agenda item, pretty big one here. And I followed along what it is, but I was trying to just get some clarification from staff on, is us doing this bringing us in line with like a mandated state change of policy? And so we're just basically kind of crossing our T's and dotting our I's here to get in line with that?
I can speak to that. Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner. Basically, this ordinance mirrors the state statute that governs this matter. So there's not a lot of flexibility that we have, other than the fact by adopting this ordinance, it allows us to charge the fee which is set forth in there, which we're not able to do now. And so, and actually, this is a model ordinance that GMA, Georgia Municipal Association, suggests that local governments adopt. So we are just really dotting I's and crossing T's and making sure that we're able to collect the application fee that we're not able to collect right now. Manager Williams may want to supplement that response.
No, Attorney Drake, I think that's spot on. And I would also say, Attorney Drake, I think our pre-existing agreements with several providers still stand, where they're more restrictive. And so I think that was a lot of great work done by the attorney's office and our staff and Georgia Municipal Association. Early on when this started developing, we were one of the first in the state. And so I agree with everything Attorney Drake said about this. We're not being necessarily mandated to do this, but it is the prevailing law, and this will allow us to charge accordingly.
Okay. I appreciate that clarification. That's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure from the experts here. And with that, I'm fine with this going back on consent.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any further questions on 1? All right, we'll go ahead and put 1 back on consent. Perfect. All right, moving on to item 4, a 2021 law enforcement training program competitive grant. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I was hoping that we could get a little bit of clarity, if not tonight, then maybe in advance of the voting meeting, on kind of the breakdown of the funding here. It looks like the bulk of the funding is going towards simunition guns and turning target training and other things that seem more about training on use of guns, even though it seems like the goals of this grant are pretty awesome. So I guess I'd just like to have a stronger understanding of how the money for the equipment in here relates to the goals.
Manager Williams?
Yes, excellent question. And all of it is meant to help for training our officers in the use of force and de-escalation. These particular items, and I noted the same thing, Commissioner Houle, I think it's an excellent question. The cost, this is hardware, and it's going to be more expensive than, say, bringing somebody on site for training. I know that, the equipment request is that they allow versatility of training and not just used for shooting or qualification. So it's for things other than shooting, less lethal, that type of training. The turning targets are a replacement of our current system. The current range system's at the end of its serviceable life, so this is a life cycle replacement. We're using grant funds to help do that. And the VR, the virtual reality system, helps to provide for a greater diversity of, scenario-based training. So beyond the static, turning targets or things, you can actually go into different scenarios and challenge the officer in their reactions and how they de-escalate. Now,
Okay, thanks.
The mental health resources, that's to provide for an annual mental health checkup for all the officers, which I think this body had asked about, caring for them and their welfare. And then with the community investments, it's a less amount, but we're hoping to improve the community issues related to use of force and policing. And I know a few years ago I attended that Blue and You meeting with the youth, and I thought that was very constructive. I'm glad to see the chief reviving that.
Thanks. And can I ask one follow-up question?
Please.
So that equipment that we get, once it's paid for with the grant to acquire, are there costs associated with the upkeep of that or having to replace it that wouldn't be covered by the grant?
Well, at a minimum, replacing it ultimately in the future, when the weapons wear out or the targets wear out, that will have to be replaced. But I don't think there's any great maintenance associated with this, but I will ask that question of staff.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of comment on the same thing that Commissioner Houle had commented on and that Manager Williams is commenting on, and thinking to myself that once again, hardware and computer simulations always cost more money than you'd like them to cost. I was really impressed when I was looking through here. I did click on a link to the ICAT training curriculum that I've heard Chief Sproul mention many times, and I think looks like a great program that really gets people thinking, officers critical thinking on crisis intervention and communication and tactics. So there were a lot of aspects of this that I thought were really good in terms of the curriculum and reaching out to the public and that mental health assessment. Is that something that we've been doing already? Do we have that mental health assessment on an annual basis? Not of every officer. That's more on a sort of an as-needed basis and consulting the psychologist for, post-event counseling and things of that nature. Thanks.
And I would recommend that if any commissioner would like to spend some time in ICAT training, something that the police department invited commissioners to do a couple of years ago when they initially rolled that out, and I spent 6 hours in that, and it was valuable use of time. Well, Chief Sproul has conveyed that he would greatly, welcome you to participate in that training, and if you have any interest, let me or him know. Thanks, Blaine. Any further questions? Keep this one on consent.
I'd actually like to keep it off for now, if that's all right.
Sure.
Just awaiting that reply. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Item number 5 is the risk management program transition. Commissioner Wright.
Madam Chair, if I can get some clarification on facts and issues 8, you might just want to send it to us in email if now's not a good time. But I'm trying to understand. I understand why we want to go back to GERMA pool, and but the fact that it doesn't cover aviation, excessive workman's compensation, 4 areas. I guess I'm trying to understand why we would go ahead and move to GERMA instead of doing an RFP that might get us a group, a new person that could do all of it, versus going to a separate person for those 4 areas.
Sure. And it's hard to find one broker that does everything. I think even with our past relationship that we had to find, supplement from a few other characters or carriers. But I will clarify that, Commissioner Wright. Excellent question. And part of this too is the structural approach, and I think that's really the main reason why we're seeking GERMA. But we'll give you some more insight as to the wisdom of pursuing this versus trying to go all in with one carrier. I can give you some more feedback on that.
Okay, and I'm fine with this going back on consent. I just want to be able to explain it and understand it, and I think that a follow-up on that will help. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other questions on this? All right, we'll put this one back on consent. All right, and then item 6, purchase of 9 hybrid Ford Interceptors for the police department. Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, I had sent Manager Williams some questions on this, and I saw that he just sent me something back, but I haven't had time to digest it. But I did ask a question on whether he could fill me in on the decision in June 2020 to reject the manager's request for vehicle replacement funding, and instead the CDO to eliminate the funding, and how that would affect our funding for those fleet replacement funds for the future. And so I just needed a little bit more background on that. And then I wanted to make a comment on the item itself, but maybe you could explain that one first to me.
Sure, absolutely. And I will just say as well, a week from tomorrow, we'll be talking about big rocks, and I'll spend a little bit of time talking about fleet replacement vis-a-vis our contributions versus what fleet replacement's been doing versus the SPLOST 2020 fund, so you can sort of put all that together. But there was a commission-defined option last year that came at the end of your budget work session. So as a manager, we did big rocks. I handed the budget to the mayor. The mayor did recommend the $438,000 in general fund support for vehicle replacement. And then there were a number of changes in the CDO that came there at the end of the process. And one of those was to eliminate the general fund fleet replacement funding. And so we had to pause that general fund fleet replacement. So those departments that depend on general fund to replace their vehicles, and so we only were able to do systematic replacements for our enterprise fund users. And sometimes in this case, we had some catastrophic failure, i.e. some wrecks that occurred. And so that's how that all came to be, Commissioner.
Okay, so then we'll be discussing whether or not we are going to restart refunding that at our budget sessions. Is that correct?
Yes, I'll have a plan, sort of a plan to get on sustainability, and given the constraints on resources we have this year, we can talk around our challenges there. Yeah.
I also wanted to make a comment and just show appreciation of that chart that shows that there's a little over $30,000 being spent here from the Renewable Energy Fund from the 2011 SPLOST, but it's going to result in that cost being made up in 3.1 years and about $49,000 being saved during the life of the vehicles. Anyway, and the number, the 273 tons of CO2, and I really appreciated getting that in the agenda item report. So I want to thank staff for that. I think that's very helpful as we go forward to have that spelled out for us as we move forward. And I just want to leave this on the agenda so I can address that in the public voting session. I plan to support this. I mean, leave it off the consent agenda, right?
So you want to discuss and vote on it individually?
Yes, right. That's right. Thank you, Kelly, for the right words. Okay.
That's okay. All right. Any other questions about that? Yeah, Jesse.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm curious, Manager Williams, if you could just enlighten me on why we went with all SUV models for replacements. It looks like a lot of these were Chevy Impalas, which I think of as smaller cars. And so I'm glad for the hybrids, but a hybrid SUV versus a car, just in terms of size of vehicle on the road as well as fuel consumption. Is there a reason why we went with all larger ones?
Well, that's so the pursuit rated models that they don't make the Chevy Impala anymore, and the Ford Interceptor. We were buying the sedan models, and then they discontinued those and moved towards the SUV. So that's really sort of a evolution of the market and what the offerings that are out there for pursuit rated vehicles. I would tell you that, for instance, and I don't have the figures in front of me, but the Dodge Chargers, besides being very aggressive optically, I don't think they're any more fuel efficient than what we're proposing here, but I can verify that.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other questions on these guys? All right. Moving on to another sustainability topic, number 10, the project concept for the subproject 11 of the SPLOST 2011 sustainability program, the idle mitigation pilot. So, Jesse, I think you pulled this one as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I guess why I was just hoping to get some kind of discussion on this is because when I was trying to I read through this twice, and it was so many numbers in so many directions. I was hoping someone could maybe give me the keep it simple, stupid, dummy version of this so that I know that I like it. I'm guessing I do, but
Cliff's Notes readers of the world unite. It's Andrew Williams. Do you want to give a high overview of this?
Sorry, I was putting away the last one. Which one is this, Commissioner Hull?
This is number 10, the idle
Number
mitigation.
10. And there's like a bunch of different, A through F, kind of all the, so.
Well, and I also want to recognize, let me pull that one out. The good work of Andrew Saunders and Mike Wharton on these things. They put a lot into this cycle. I'm sorry, y'all. Give me 1 second. Apologize, y'all. I had that out of order. So this is a number of concepts coming to you, and they're all common to our SPLOST funding for energy sustainability. And so there's 3 items here, really. One is the funding supplement of the $31,000 that Commissioner Myers just spoke of for the upgrades into the hybrid package for the police vehicles. So that's number 1. The second is there were some prior energy audits that were done that recommended a number of improvements across the government. These are high priority energy conservation measures such as HVAC upgrades, lighting improvements, additional insulation, and that is for folks that are following attachment 1 is the number of and they're everywhere from Memorial Park to the Multimodal Center to Fire Station 9, for instance. So there's light switches and lighting improvements, HVAC improvements across the government. And then the third is for the idle mitigation pilot program. and that is going to be that pilot's going to be done on a new fire rescue truck, and it's a battery system. As you know, and you may have seen this before, when you have an emergency vehicle on site, it's necessary to have lights, all sorts of accessories going on during the event, and they just have to leave the vehicle running. And in this case, this will allow all those systems to operate without actually having the engine running. So that's a pilot project, and I think it was Tallahassee, Florida, where Andrew and Mike have found that this has been a quick return on money. So we're going to try that out.
Any other questions on this item?
I don't have questions on it. I just have appreciation for it again. I think that Andrew Saunders and Mike Wharton have done a really creative job and finding different areas to spend this funds in. And for that reason, I want to leave it. I don't know the words again, Kelly. I don't want it to be on the consent agenda so that I can give it its due attention and have it up for the discussion. What are we calling that again?
So it's leaving it off consent.
Keeping it off consent.
They accept the praise at the agenda setting meeting. Everybody.
Yeah, well,
everybody feels the love resonate.
Well, I just want to spell out the certain things that are there so that people watching or any of our media can also see how we're addressing our 100% resolution.
All right.
Okay.
Anything else on item 10? All right. Moving forward to old business. Item number 12 is regards the Living Hope Church at 2150 Lexington Road. And this was held for a cycle because there was some question of the, I recall the vehicle movement throughout the plan. And this is Commissioner Parker's district. Go ahead, Commissioner Parker.
So I was able to go by the site and kind of get my eyes on some of the requested changes by the petitioners. Namely, the planning had specified they needed to have like a cut-through driveway to run across the property. But upon visiting the site, I saw what they were talking about how that would decrease their green space and sort of intrude on an area within the property that has a lot of pedestrian foot traffic from people entering and exiting the church. And so I would agree with their ask that particular part of the plan be amended, waiving that requirement. So that's all to do with that item. Otherwise, would happy to approve.
Thanks, Commissioner.
And I will forward that via email to everyone so they know what that change is.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Any other questions about this item? Okay. All right. Moving on to new business. Item 13, long in the works, waste collection and storage in the Central Business District. Any takers here? Manager Williams, you want to give a kind of overview of how we may be able to kind of move beyond just Clayton Street into kind of the broader frame of downtown?
Yes, sir. Thank you. So you'll note that this agenda item is only asking you to approve the Clayton Street locations, even though at the previous work session, the February work session, you had asked to come back with a plan for all of downtown, which staff did provide at the March work session. There's a price tag of approximately $500,000 to do all of downtown. Staff is 100% on board because this will be a uniform approach to dealing with waste downtown, which will be much more efficient and I think cost efficient for both the government and the businesses downtown. What we'd like to do in moving the Clayton Street project forward is to go ahead and have you approve the agenda item as recommended. That'll nail down those Clayton Street locations. Meanwhile, I've asked SPLOST staff, program staff, to identify all of the various placeholders for the 2005 and the T-SPLOST funds for the downtown business infrastructure. My hope is that we can pay for the extra eco stations using SPLOST funds, making sure that everything else is covered. As you'll see next week, we have some challenges with funding capital, and so $500,000 diverted of general fund dollars towards eco stations would come at the expense of other necessary things. So we're just chasing down some additional funding sources, and we, of course, come back to you to finalize that, another agenda item, and just asking that you go ahead and pursue the Clayton Street locations.
Thanks for that overview. Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I'm just excited to see this move forward. And are these, just to get clarification, because I know we talked on the whole downtown project, the last work session, about that the Cultural Affairs Commission was going to be working to put art. Is that going to be also a part of this, the Clayton Street option, or would that part of the art installations be attached to the following agenda item?
It will start with the Clayton Street facilities, is my understanding.
Okay, fantastic. So, I mean, I think our entire community is going to be very pleased with getting the trash up off the ground. It's no complaint that we got a lot of us got about downtown, but also we're going to have just more public art throughout the downtown area. So this is fantastic, and I mean, I'd be happy with this going on consent. So,
thanks, Melissa.
Yeah, I just want to just a little rundown of the process so far. Is when it comes to consulting the businesses and property owners on these locations. I've seen those teams of solid waste folks wandering around downtown checking out these potential locations. I just want to make sure that they've been vetted by the folks who actually live, work, businesses downtown on a daily basis.
Well, I'm not sure that each individual business has been consulted about the locations. I know we've gone through multiple work sessions and agenda cycle. I can inquire staff as to how much outreach has been done.
I mean, has the ADDA put out a notice? I mean, I know they're supposed to be in touch with all the downtown businesses. I just want to make sure that we don't get some reaction after this is a done deal, you know, as to these locations. Well,
ADDA has been watching very closely, and they've given some frank feedback about some locations, you know, the one in front of Luxury, for instance, and then another one down by the Hilton Garden Inn parking deck, you know, concerns about, you know, the structure itself and the location and the appearance to others. And so we have made some changes in the original siting locations based on their input. But I can check with staff and DDA on any additional outreaches may have been performed.
I mean, it would just be a really, really good idea to circulate this map among those business owners directly in the time between this meeting and our vote. Yeah, I've not heard from any business owners, so that kind of makes me a little suspicious that they might be in the dark about all this.
We'll circle back on that, Commissioner. Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding this correct, Manager Williams will only be voting on the ones in the Clayton Street area, and the other ones will be delayed to another time in upcoming months if we find the funds there. I'm actually glad of that. I was looking through this on the agenda report, and you know, there's a lot of these structures. I mean, how many is the total?
Oh gosh, well, in this agenda item, there's 6, I believe, and
okay,
it seems like there were somewhere in the mid-teens.
Yeah. So I, you know, and I kept having just been in a city for a week. I was like, am I seeing these big, you know, units all over the cities and places? And I think it'll be a good idea for us to see what these actually look at like before we distribute, you know, another dozen all around downtown, and to see how they work and how the business owners just how they are visually. So I'm glad of that. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Edwards.
Yeah, I'm looking in the agenda and I don't see the attachment A map of the locations. Am I missing it?
If I might, Clerk Spratlin, was that a late addition from solid waste? I think Clerk Spratlin may have emailed that out late this afternoon. Commissioner Edwards, you may have missed it.
Okay.
But we'll make sure it's posted publicly.
It is on the public agenda on the website. You can pull it up there on that item.
Oh, thanks for that. All right. Does everybody want to leave this on discussion? Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing affirmative from Commissioner Link. All right. Moving on to item 14, which is the Classic Center pre-construction and construction management at risk services. Manager Williams, just for the benefit of the public and particularly commissioners who are new to the body, can you discuss how management at risk differs from some of the other approaches we take to project delivery?
Mr. Mayor, sorry, I hate to interrupt. I just had one. I'm looking at this map and I'm looking at the agenda. It says corner of Clayton Street and College Avenue outside Wuck Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at the map and that's not marked.
Right. No, that's thank you, Commissioner. The map is correct and updated, and that we did not update the agenda item. My understanding is that one got moved closer to the parking deck up College, and I believe, and I'll confirm, is represented by number 5. No. I'll confirm that, Commissioner Edwards.
And so we would anticipate seeing updated narrative to match the visual.
Yes.
Maybe it must be the one that's right in the middle of College Square. You know, the map could, you know, if we could get a little more detail on the map, just to, you know, exactly where these things are going, I think that could really help. Right now, I'm just kind of, a little more detail, I think would go a long way. Maybe I can talk more with you about it, but I'm just seeing numbers on a Google map of the streetscape. I think maybe just a little more detail there and matching it up with the agenda. And as Commissioner Link said, you know, making sure that's very well publicized so people know what's coming would serve us well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Edwards.
Commissioner Wright? Nope. Okay. All right. We'll see a little bit more on this one. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right. So again, moving on to 14, the pre-construction and construction management at risk. So Manager Williams, if you could just describe management at risk as a delivery model.
Sure. And what most folks are accustomed to is you hire an architect, you design it, and then the plans are drawn, and then it's bid out, and then multiple contractors will bid on it. Construction manager at risk is slightly different, and there are some benefits to it, and I've used it in my past career, and I think it's superior. And what happens is early on, after you get your design professional, your architect on board, you go through a procurement process, and you select a construction manager or a contractor, and then you agree to pay them a fee, a certain percentage, based on the cost of the work. What you don't know is what the cost of the work is. So usually it's some percentage of the final, and that's the competitive, one of the competitive criteria that you gauge. And you bring that construction manager on early, and they are present with the architect during design. They do constructability reviews. And what I found in my experience is this really cuts down on a lot of finger pointing and coordination later on when the project's under construction, because there are no excuses. The contractor should know fully what was meant when it was there. And oftentimes you get the practical in the field knowledge baked into the design. So that's one benefit. What happens at the end of it is the final construction drawings are complete, and then the contractor puts those out to bid for subcontractors to come bid on. As the owner, we have the ability to see all those bids. And so it's all very transparent. And then the construction manager chooses his subcontractors based on bids, puts the package together, and hands it back to us. And it's called construction manager at risk, because once that number is known, then they are signing on the dotted line. That's what we'll build it for. Now there's some there's some contingencies, of course, with all projects in the contract, if weather drags it out or unforeseen conditions. But by and large, the construction manager is at risk for the work. And so that also cuts down on, particularly with projects that are much larger, people coming in with bids with large contingencies because they're not quite sure what's all in the plans. You've got that intimate knowledge from the get-go. So it's just all around. It's a little more involved for all parties, but at the end of the day, I think you get a better product and a better price.
Thanks for that. Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, thanks, Manager Williams, for that. That was helpful. I also wanted to mention on this that the Classic Center Authority Project Procurement Director, Mr. Richard Sawyer, has reached out to me because of conversations I've had before coming on the commission with 100% renewable and the desire for the arena to be as sustainable as possible. And he wanted to clarify to me that they're looking at 3 final teams right now, and that the team's sustainability capabilities will be part of the focus on the final selection. What I appreciate is that he is reaching out and being very proactive about this, and he's also reiterated that he has said to the teams, that the different companies, that public interaction with stakeholders is going to be really important in this whole process. And I was really pleased to hear that as well, that commitment to the public involvement in the process and the commitment to the sustainability being factors that are being considered as they're picking this construction at risk firm. So just wanted to share that.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other input on this item? Yeah, Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. So all the spots where it says to be determined, am I interpreting correctly that at the voting meeting, those will be filled in with someone who's selected by that committee, or?
Yes, the agenda item will be updated hopefully before the voting meeting, and the additions will be in gray shade, and the deletions will be in strike through, and we will get that back out and post it publicly with those. And it's not unusual in moving a project forward for the agenda item to come online while the final procurement recommendations being made, and that's the case here.
Other questions? Okay, to move this to consent. All right. Right. 14 on consent, Madam Clerk. All right, moving on to item 15, which is another SPLOST 2020 project, fire department equipment. Questions about this item? Consent? All right. 15 on consent as well. All right, item 16 is the proposed project concept for expenditure from our last SPLOST 2011 for solar on the Athens-Clarke County Library. You may remember they're getting a new roof over there, and so that new roof now will facilitate solar panels. Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I just have a question. I'm getting confused. This is another. This is money. Is this just for the grant, or does this also include money from SPLOST as well? It does, right? Yeah.
Yes, the SPLOST is being used as match for the state grant for the solar.
Okay,
so there's two things going on. The library is replacing its roof. And well, it's renewing its roof, and it's going to leverage some grant funds from the state. And then we're also going after the solar project, and I think through GFA getting some grant funds for that as well.
Okay, and so we're having it as a separate item from the previous one with all the other item, number 10, because this also involves grant money. Would that, I mean, number 10 had a bunch of different projects in it that were related to Project 23.
Well, and 10, you're right. 10 had a lot in it already. And so, but we did call it out because it's sufficiently large and distinct enough to merit its own.
Okay.
Other questions about this one? Consent? Consent. All right. 17 is another solar project, and a unique one, I believe, among all the solar projects we've done, in that it also includes solar battery storage for the ACC Domestic Violence Center. Consent?
Oh,
Mr. Myers?
did we get, did a report just come out on that today?
I
Yes.
believe that's correct.
Okay, I just kind of like to leave it off consent so I can read the report, because I haven't read that one yet.
It was sent out this afternoon.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to 18 is our FY22 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I'd like to see a little more information about some of these. I'm particularly interested in, and I want to make sure that I'm on the right thing when I was looking at these earlier. I'm interested in more information on the Family Promise Program. I understand they're doing some really good and necessary work in temporary housing for homeless folks. And I'm interested in I know it, from what I understand, it's a coalition of faith organizations. And I'm interested to know exactly who participates in that coalition and at what capacity.
Okay, we'll follow up on that, Commissioner Link.
Thank you.
Very briefly, Commissioner, there are somewhere in the range of a dozen or 15 faith communities who participate in this together. And formerly known as Interfaith Hospitality.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, maybe if just the materials that were submitted for the funding just could be forwarded, I'm more interested in looking into that program.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. And on this, I know in the past, for the work session, I believe we did have this the last time we discussed CDBG priorities, but I know we've had a bunch of waves of it this year. But if we can have the vision committee's analysis and voting how it was prioritized for these ones to get, I think it's just great for transparency. I know it's questions that I've gotten from some of the nonprofit sector in the past, and I think if that's part of the agenda item, it shows the process much more and makes it much more transparent. So if we could have that attached to the agenda item for whenever we discuss this at the voting session, that'd be great.
Thank you, Commissioner Denson.
Other questions? All right, we get a little bit more information as requested. All right, number 19, as seen at the work session last week, is final design approval for the Washington Street Park. Weather's getting warm. People are going to be gathering once again, we know, and this is going to be a great place for that. Any questions about this item? Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I like this updated map. I think it addresses some of the concerns that were brought up during the work session. I mean, I think this is going to be a really exciting space. Do we have any ETA on it? Anyone?
The DDA is managing that. I know they're anxious to move it forward, but I don't have the ETA on that.
Okay. Hopefully sooner rather than later.
Other input on this? Commissioner Denson.
Yes. I'm also at the work session presentation on this. The discussion was great. I think the entire commission was very excited and liked how this plan is coming together. It was reiterated over and over again because I think it's an important thing just for expectations that this is a very small park. You look at this map, keep in mind it's a small area, but it's going to be really fantastic. And if we could get from the ADDA information on expected timeline, I think that would be a good thing to have included in the agenda item. But just for the public, if who wants to look there, but I mean, otherwise, with this actual plan, I mean, I'm happy with this going on consent if we wanted to.
Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm happy with this going on consent too. Also love it. Like the lizarding, that was fun. I am curious if we could maybe get an update at the voting meeting on any recommendations for what to do with the Ben Epps statue, because I think it was Commissioner Davenport had asked about that. But since it's probably not staying in that park, if that could be included in some kind of update in advance of the meeting, that'd be great.
I know from the most recent Downtown Development Authority meeting that they have a couple of sites in mind, prospectively right across the street where Ben Epps bicycle shop was, and then Ben Epps Airport itself. So, but I can follow up. Commissioner Wright.
Can you tell me right now what's in that bike location? What building is it?
Woodford.
Oh, okay. All right. That's good. I vote for. I like that idea.
Used to be the hangar in the old days.
Mm-hmm. I can offer a little context on that Ben Epps statue because I was on the Cultural Affairs Commission when that was donated, and we went through a pretty extensive process to select the site for it. And I can't remember, there might be some agreement with the donors regarding the site. So I think it would be, it's really important to get the Cultural Affairs Commission in on that decision on whether or not to move it. I mean, I don't see why it couldn't stay in that park. Maybe, I don't see why not. But yeah, I think it would be well advised to consult with the Cultural Affairs Commission and see if they have any record of the exact conversation and process that we went through in selecting that site.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Thanks, Commissioner. Everybody okay with this on consent?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, we're going to go ahead and move 19 to consent. All right, item 20, back for round 2, recommendations for review of the lead certification program.
It's okay. So this came out of LRC. Commissioner Thornton was chairing that meeting, so I'm going to pass the latest round of discussions on to committee members who were there. But it did come out of there unanimous as it is presented.
All right.
I really think that the committee did the work. I want to thank Andrew Saunders for filling in the gaps. I just facilitated the meeting. If Carol or Jesse would like to share how we got to this point, that would be fine. But I just really facilitated it, and we got out at a decent hour. How about that?
Commissioner Houle.
Oh, can I? Well, yeah, I was going to say, in that meeting, we talked about a bunch of things that have been discussed in between. I think that were in the CDO version of this. And as far as I can tell, Andrew did a great job, Andrew Saunders, of updating the policy language to reflect all of those things. We had also addressed some of Commissioner Link's questions, and I think pretty much all of them are reflected in here, with the exception of the TAD funding question, which is basically that's kind of a big can of worms we thought best opened when this policy will be reviewed. There's like a sunset date in here that says that we'll review this again on a 5-year cycle, but sooner than that the first time around. So hopefully everybody feels good about it. I know I feel good about this as it is. And Carol's dug even deeper into this, so I'm sure she has thoughts.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Commissioner. See, Commissioner Link and Commissioner Myers.
Yeah, I just want to thank the members of the LRC for inviting the rest of us to offer input on this. I went through and we had some comments, and Commissioner Myers and I had several conversations, and it looks like, they've really implemented those suggestions, and there's a lot of good work coming out of this. And my biggest concern was making sure that there was a mechanism in here for regular revisiting of this, because the technology changes so quickly. It's really, really crucial that this whole policy we return to it on a very, very regular basis to incorporate any new changes in technology.
All right. Commissioner Myers.
Okay. Yeah, I am really, really happy about this building code that we have here. I think it is a wonderful advancement from what we had before. For all of us here, what we're basically doing is dividing all of our buildings into smaller buildings of 5,000 square feet or less and larger buildings. And there's some basic requirements for all buildings. But then for the larger ones, they now have a choice of LEED certification, Earthcraft, or Green Globe certification. So that gives the planners and people involved a little bit more leeway there. Andrew Saunders and Mike Wharton did a really good job of getting that base in there. And then we got suggestions from some of the 100% Athens people that I've been working with for years, and added some more clarification on the EV chargers that, again, Andrew Saunders and Mike even upped further. So we have 10% of EV charging spots if we have 14 or more spots, and it goes up to 20 EV chargeable spots if we have 50 or more spots ready. They've added an EV, a solar and EV ready plan that projects have to present. We have some reporting requirements in there at the concept phase, at the design phase, and then 18 months afterwards to sort of see how the actual building works with what was planned for. And as Commissioner Link said, there's an update, regular update, with the original one coming after our clean energy plan, which should be coming to us in about a year or 2 years, and then every 5 years after that. And so I think that, with the additions that Commissioner Link put in there, and it was a great opportunity to involve all of the commission, the public, the staff. And I think it's just a really good code for going forward. I'm really happy to have been part of this.
Mr. Mayor, I want to say that it was a good meeting, and Commissioner Myers always does a great job in enlightening folk that were not there. But I hope that we take the opportunity to start encouraging people to watch our meetings, our committee meetings, and I hope we would take the same kind of networking that we did on this project and go into the community and meet with people, and not just do it at our meet. We need to reach more people. Everybody doesn't watch this. A lot of people talk to us, but some of this stuff we need to be talking to people directly about and giving it that personal attention. I like the fact that we work together. I like the fact that we got input before the meeting. And I also don't think we can get it all out at our commission meetings. So I do enjoy, I do appreciate the input. Facilitating that group was probably one of the easiest things I've had to do. But I think it comes more than us just getting on the screen. We need to get out and promote this stuff personally.
Thanks for that, Commissioner. Commissioner Wright.
Mr. Mayor, I would be honored if this would go on consent so we can show the community how much we like this. And we are going to move it on with one big vote. That'd be great.
Commitment?
Yes.
All right. I'm feeling it. Thank you, everybody. All right. Madam Clerk, 20 also on consent. Marvelous. All right. Moving on to sort of an occasional recurrent program check-in in the midst of this pandemic, the extension of our parklet program that several businesses are taking advantage of downtown. Commissioner Link?
Sorry. Yeah, we are, hold on, let me pull up the item. I was looking at this earlier. We're extending this into, what is it, June?
Well, the parklet program, we're just going to make it coterminous with any local emergency. We kept setting these dates, and here we are at March 31st. And so we're just going to say that the parklet program appears to be working and appears to promote safety. And so as long as you have a local emergency associated with COVID in place, parklets will exist.
So has there been any discussion with that epidemiological advisory team about setting some thresholds regarding our local emergency? I know we're going to start getting inquiries from bar owners about going back to the 2 a.m. closing. Now that we have vaccinations going out, it might be wise to set a vaccination threshold in addition to a community spread threshold, just some clear threshold so the public knows what direction we need to head in order to start getting back to normal. Has that team met and had those discussions?
Well, yes. And so these are researchers, academics, clinicians representing different organizations. And, that's the thing that, Commissioner Link, we've struggled from the beginning is what can we have a threshold structure that we could anchor to? And their response to that question is there's so many different frameworks out there, of what you could do. Mm-hmm. And I will say, with central services staff and with relation to special events, Andrew has helped to begin, a look back of, certain threshold exposures in the community and then where the hospitals were at that given time. And so he's developing an in-house threshold as it relates to special events, and when to have those. And so we might be able to build on that. That's the closest thing to what you're asking, Commissioner Link, that we've got.
Yeah. I just know that we are going to, I've already gotten at least one call from a bar owner, asking us when we're going to go back to letting them open till 2 again. And I don't know what to tell them. We're going to see more of those. So I'd really like to, maybe we need a work session about it, or maybe, that team could bring us those multiple thresholds and we could have that discussion. But I feel like we also need to consider the vaccination rate. They say herd immunity is reached at like 75-80%. Maybe we could reach a threshold around there for vaccinations.
Commissioner, one important element to remember is that by mediated settlement with those establishments that contested our last call in Superior Court, we determined that there would be no change at least until the end of the judicial emergency. So we know that's a defined horizon. I don't know, Attorney Drake, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. I was going to point that out to the commission that currently that is tied to the judicial state of emergency, which is separate from the governor's executive order, and that's Chief Justice Melton, and he's demonstrated that he's been very, very conservative in how he's approached the pandemic, and so we felt very more confident in tying it to that parameter. Mm-hmm. So as long as the judicial emergency is in effect, the 12 o'clock curfew is in effect.
That the population associated with the judicial emergency might be different than the population associated with the downtown bar scene. And, granted that younger, healthy population is not at risk for severe COVID, but they do spread it around. And what we're concerned about now is this virus jumping from host to host and mutating into a form that is not affected by the vaccines. That's the real danger at this point. So I feel like we really need to consider those nuances in how this pandemic works and consult with those scientists, when it comes to different aspects of our restrictions.
I'll say, Commissioner, I'd be really glad to bring back to the epidemiological group these questions, but definitely this pertaining to the parklets, we just want to get some clarity around extension of this. Commissioner Edwards, Houle, and then Myers.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think we lost the image of the clock from the clerk. Is Clerk Spratlin?
Her clock image would not work this evening, so I apologize for that.
I think the parklet program is going great. I think we should begin thinking about how in some areas we might want to continue the parklet program beyond the state of emergency. This has been a very popular program for restaurants throughout downtown. I was just down Washington Street the other day. You think about how wide Washington Street is. The parklet areas there are thriving, and we should certainly consider extending it beyond whatever this pandemic emergency, whenever it might expire. Now, when it comes to and then I'll just touch on this briefly, the bar closing. As we talk about the bar closing time, I would like to know, Manager Williams, I'd like a report to coincide with that discussion from solid waste and from police regarding how the midnight closure has changed their work schedule and their funding requirements from the city. Could you help me with that, Manager Williams? Because it's my understanding that we're saving a boatload of money, and we're saving a lot of stress and very tough work for some of our frontline employees by packing things up at midnight. And so I could say for me right now, I stand where closing time at midnight makes pretty good sense to me, especially in light of all the problems our police have been having downtown, the discrimination, the attacks upon our solid waste personnel. Downtown between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. just has not been a good vibe for a long time. And so I would need those figures before I'd even begin to think about moving it back to 2 a.m. So thanks, Manager Williams.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Commissioner Houle and Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. So I saw here that the recommendation was for us to extend the parklet program except on Lower Washington Street. And it sounds like that's due to a decreased amount of activity there observed in the last few months. And my knee-jerk thought on that is that there's probably been a decrease in activity because it's been so cold. So I guess my personal feeling is I'd like to continue it there as well. I don't know. I guess Manager Williams, if you have any information you could shed light on that situation, that would be helpful if my inference is accurate or not. And then I guess I'd be curious colleagues' thoughts on extending it everywhere, including Washington. It sounds like Commissioner Edwards was wanting to do that as well.
Well, and so the different from the parklet program. So the parklet program is open to restaurants, but no one else. The outdoor retail areas pilot program so the parklets are available in Lower Washington, but the outdoor retail area was done in response to the upcoming game days when they started having those game days, and how do we let the businesses access the customers in a safe way. And so the outdoor retail areas was an expansion of the parklet where other businesses could participate in outdoor areas, which included bars. And now what we're hearing from the folks in the area is that they are not interested in seeing it be renewed. These folks have noted an overall decline in participation. There's an impact from lost parking on these various businesses, and 2 of the 5 that were originally there have since gone out of business. So staff was just responding to some of the feedback we got from the folks in that immediate area regarding that outdoor retail areas pilot. Now, all of the restaurants in that block could avail themselves of parklets if they want to.
And would the bars be able to avail themselves of the parklets?
Not with the parklet program.
Okay. So, for example, Flickr, if Flickr wanted to be we would need to extend the outdoor retail areas pilot program in order for Flickr to still have their location. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, that's correct.
Commissioner Myers, then back to Commissioner Link.
I apologize, Commissioner Houle.
No, I'm fine now.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Link.
I think I'd like to work with my fellow commissioners on a CDO for this that would ensure the persistence of the Washington Street parklet or retail area program, because that is being used. And I know for a fact that the business owners do very much want it and like it. And, you know, the weather is getting warmer, so I'm certain it will get used more. In fact, I was thinking about going down there myself now that it's warmer. And also, you know, now that viral spread is decreasing and people are getting vaccinated, this is an area of town that has a slightly older crowd that's a little more cautious and is more likely to be staying home. But now these are the very folks who are getting vaccinated and are more likely to start going out again.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right, we will be seeing some more of this. All right, I'm going to move on to somewhat related matter, the extension of the College Square outdoor dining pilot program between Clayton and Broad Street. And so you see some traffic data, some staff observations, and the suggestion of continuing this through mid-year. Commissioner Edwards.
This project has been a tremendous success, and I think it will always be. I think it always will be. I mean, just the people and the pedestrians that are now congregating in this area and creating a more vibrant, pedestrian-minded atmosphere has just been a tremendous benefit to the county as a whole. I saw some toddlers riding their scooters through there the other day. It's just a really cool vibe down there right now. And I think I'm ready to move towards permanent closure and exploring SPLOST funding in the next round to really turn it into a beautiful asset that we can be proud of forever. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Denson.
There we go. Agreeing with Commissioner Edwards, this has been a complete success. And I see the survey says that over 97% of people surveyed are in favor of permanent closure. I don't know if we're ever going to get as good results on any kind of survey in the future. And plus, the traffic study came back and said that not only does it not have a negative impact on traffic and pedestrians, but has a positive impact. So that all leads me here to, yes, why are we not going ahead and voting to make this permanent right now? Why delay this through the summer while we could be working on the plans right now so that those full-time plans can be implemented soon? I just don't understand the necessity for us to put off what seems like the inevitable. I'd rather us be the community knowing what we're doing, us committing to it, and being able to start on the work as soon as possible. So, I mean, I'm very interested in looking into a CDO where we just simply make this permanent rather a temporary extension.
Manager Williams, can you describe kind of what staff would seek to do in a spring work session?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. And I did want to clarify that. I appreciate you bringing that up. So even though we're extending it through July 31st, and just to remind everybody, late last summer, you approved the closure, and it took a few months to actually get it closed. And we just wanted to string together, 6 months of data to be able to show you and the public, so you could make an informed decision. And you could certainly do that, Commissioner Denson. But what the current plan is, if you approve this, that we would continue surveys. We would, survey some downtown businesses, and not just those in the square, but surrounding the square as well, and develop some concepts about how the space might be used, and all this done very publicly, and then come to you in a work session in late spring, say probably May, and present this to you with a follow-on agenda item so that you could choose either way what you'd like to do with the space. But certainly it's your prerogative if you wanted to move ahead and close the space as well.
Follow up, Commissioner Denson? Is that everything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I hear where Manager Williams is coming from, but I guess, and I think all of that is fantastic way for us to move forward. But I guess I also don't see. I mean, I think we're closing it, right? We're going to close it. We are, and yeah, I don't know. I guess just again, just if there's a reason for us to do this temporary, but also this seems like a potentially stalling. I don't know. Yeah, I'm curious to hear what other commissioners have to say, but.
Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm with my colleagues that I'm interested in, permanently closing it, even if it stays with the temporary structures that are in place right now. And another part of why it makes sense to me to do it sooner is with the Art Street project that we just voted on and the rest of the redesign happening. I'm imagining as that work is progressing, hammers swinging each day, having it solidified in everybody's mind that this is where we're heading might lead to better decisions around those projects moving forward as well.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Link?
You're muted, Commissioner Link.
Devices here. So I don't know where my hands are going. I'm certainly in favor of closing College Square, but I do think we need to be transparent as possible about it. I don't know that it would be appropriate to just spring it on in a CDO at a voting meeting. It might be, I think it's prudent to collect that data from the surrounding businesses and downtown owners and stuff, just so they have a clear heads up of where we're heading with this.
Any others? Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I think like Commissioner Jensen said, the kind of support that we have here is pretty overwhelming. This is something that people who've lived in the community for a long time have thought was a no-brainer and kind of wondered why it hadn't happened sooner. I'm looking at the facts. I think it's the facts and figures part of the agenda report, and it talks about the permanent conversion of the space may require a process to engage the community, business owners, special event sponsors, and other stakeholders to require. And I think that either way, whether or not we vote for the short-term extension, we're going to move forward into this, whether or not it would be, hey, or do we all want to do this? But then what do we want to do with it? I think that's where we really want to have the public discussion about how we would design and what that space would look like. I was surprised when I looked at the title of this again. I hadn't realized that this is down as an outdoor dining pilot program. Because I was just thinking of it as a public space, a central public space. And so I think the public opinion is pretty clear that this should stay closed. It's the planning and the visioning that needs to have the fuller public input. Whether or not we do that now or do that in 4 months, in terms of closing it permanently, I could go either way. I think we're going to, whichever works for staff, for the commission, what we think is best for the public, I'm supporting.
That's an excellent point, Commissioner Myers. And whether you close it now or you wait, I think the staff thinks it'd still be good to have a work session to present next steps, associated cost, so everybody knows, what's on the horizon.
Commissioner Davenport.
Move to consent.
Folks want to move to consent as is or give a little bit more thought to? All right. Let's keep it on discussion. Give some more thought. Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm wondering I think, Commissioner Link's point is well taken, wanting to get the public involved and give time to this and not just make a permanent decision as a CDO. I'm wondering if it's feasible for us to just have the permanent proposal on our May agenda. So discuss it in April, not necessarily making permanent decisions around the design and things, but at least making that commitment that it's going to happen so that we can, again, bear that in mind for these other projects that are happening in tandem with that space.
Commissioner Wright.
I'd like to see staff continue their focus on Clayton Street instead of moving this one sort of ahead in order. I think that there's still we're finally getting to discussing the surface level of the Clayton Street project. Everything's been sort of a challenging underground stuff. I I agree with Commissioner Link's strategy for this. I've been telling people who inquire to me that we've got 6 months of data to put together, and so far we have 78 surveys, although they're great numbers of support of it, but it is 78 surveys. And I think that for the commitment that we want and the input from people, we need to go through those processes as the manager has stepped out because for a lot of the reasons Commissioner Link said.
All right. Sounds like there's a lot of agreement. I think some way to coalesce around an approach. I think there's lots of shared ground. I also support permanent closure here and definitely interested in seeing what the future iteration could look like beyond the furniture that's there now. Commissioner Davenport, I think I overlooked you. I'm sorry.
So I just want to clarify because we can move this. So it seems like there are two issues. The agenda report as is posted, we just want to keep it closed for 6 months. But in the interim, we can still discuss, future prospects of this part. For this space. But I would like to see it closed as well. I think, of course, more broader community input would be great as well. But just want to, I just think it'd be good just to go ahead and send it to consent. But I understand more discussion is needed.
All right, one more time, Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Commissioner Wright's points about focusing on Clayton are well taken, and I guess that's why, to me, it makes sense to make a decision about this one way or another, so that the things that are happening on Clayton Street can happen with this in mind, because that intersects directly with this area. I'm especially thinking about a lot of what came up in our discussion around the art project and how that might unfold differently if we know that this is going to be a pedestrian space rather than a space that will be reopened to vehicular traffic again. So, we can all sit here and say that we feel like we're very likely to do it. And then if that's the case, that's still not the same as actually doing it. And if we're going to honor the purpose of having public input, it's to give people the opportunity to, convince us to potentially do things differently. So I'd like to see us actually make the decision rather than continue to operate as if it's going to happen, and then see how that might actually bear fruit for the Clayton Street project.
All right, Commissioner Myers.
I wasn't really putting a hand up, but since you called on me, perhaps Manager Williams can actually present us or send us some sort of email that summarizes what would be impacted on the Clayton Street from knowing project as we're going forward. If we knew that College Station, if we made that vote, like, would there be any difference in what we're doing in Clayton Street and how that would affect the project? Make sense?
Yes, we can do that in your follow-up report.
Okay. All right. Some more discussion to be had for sure. All right. Moving on. Item 23 is a comprehensive opioid, stimulant, and substance abuse site-based program grant, quite significant grant to support members of our community dealing with substance use disorder. So, input on this item.
I wanted to make a quick comment and hope that it goes to consent because it is an outstanding grant opportunity to enhance what we're already doing and make some more outreach to the young adults. I think the first statement says it all. The nation's substance abuse problem is a public safety and health emergency that threatens the well-being of individuals who abuse drugs as well as their family and communities. So I'm thrilled that that we were identified as one of the groups, part of the community in Georgia to be included in this.
Thanks, Commissioner.
I have a quick question.
Looking
at the breakdown of expenses on the final page of the agenda item where it says supervision and support, it talks about supervision, drug testing, and electronic monitoring. I was wondering if we could get some more details about that. If electronic monitoring, when I hear that, I think of like ankle bracelets that are used for people who are on house arrest or otherwise like geographically constricted as a part of a court order or at the request or requirement of the courts. And so just understanding if there is overlap between that and what is kind of programmed here with regards to expenses as well as supervision, if that has to do with any kind of, I guess I just like clarification about what those couple of things mean. So if we could leave that off consent so we could discuss that at the voting meeting, that'd be great.
Absolutely. We'll give you some further follow-up there. I think the electronic monitoring is in lieu of incarceration, but we'll verify that.
Any further input on this item? Commissioner Hoole.
I just want to share, I think, generally this is great. And this is the kind of work that would dovetail really well with the Cahoots kind of program. So as we were discussing in the work session last week about what Cahoots could do, this kind of work is a part of what they do in other communities.
Commissioner Denson.
Thank you, Mayor. And just the build on Commissioner Hoole's comments there, I know at least some of us got an email today from Judge Sweat, who there is a presentation on this specific grant and how other communities are utilizing this grant along with programs like Cahoots. So I'll make sure I send it out so that the entire commission has access to be able to interact with that meeting also.
Thanks, Commissioner. And for members of the public and certainly for this body, kind of often what we find in kind of the recovery space that certainly in some ways dovetails with criminal justice actors is that we've got many gears working together, and this is one of those alongside co-responders or a future expanded iteration of that. And as the agenda report indicates, this really doesn't deal with the maybe more challenging client population that you find in the accountability courts. So exciting that we're stepping forward as a community to support our friends and neighbors. Commissioner Denson.
Sorry, Mayor. I had one more thing, and this will be, and maybe this is something that staff can put in our follow-up report, because I know that there was talks with this kind of program with like how this will work also with our pre-arrest diversion program, which I know was created and we had implemented, but I don't think it's actually at this time being implemented by the police department. It's not being actually utilized yet, because I know the pandemic and timing with that kind of got a little messy. So if staff could give us an update on where the pre-arrest diversion program is, because I really want to make sure that is being utilized if we're going to be utilizing this program, because those two things should be going hand in hand.
Thanks for that, Commissioner. I appreciate it. And I know there's some interest in the DA's office in sort of expanding the range of that pre-arrest work that formerly we had interacted with the solicitor about. All right. 24 is by title only. It's a project concept for the next step in our water trails program. Commissioner Wright.
Thank you. I wanted to highlight this exciting water trails project because I worked with Commissioner Neesmith on the first water river access that's at Ben Burton. And if the public and those of us who want to promote it in our newsletters and outreach, it describes this Princeton Mill launch site that's off of Macon Highway. It's on the Leisure Services website, and there's public input sessions out at Ben Burton to promote it and to get feedback. And then there will be a WebEx one as well. And the details of those are on there. And then it says that between March 21 and April 4th, there'll be a survey as well. So that we can just keep the beat going on that as far as people giving their input and support for this. It's taken a long time for us to get a second launch site, which means we can now have an official water trail on the same river. And so that's really exciting.
Thanks for noting that. We no longer will have to get out in Commissioner Edwards' backyard. So, all right. Any further input on that? And again, you're going to be receiving a full report from staff. Commissioner Hoole?
I just want to point out that I'm still going to get out in Commissioner Edwards' backyard.
As well it should be. All right, 25 is a set of minor modifications. You're going to receive a packet regarding to the cafe requirements for East Clayton Street. All right, and then we have, I believe, 5 planning and zoning items, and I believe Rick Cowick is with us tonight.
Yes, sir.
And Rick, I'm going to make sure you're a presenter so you can present these items to us. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, sir. Good evening. We have 5 zoning cases coming before you tonight from the Planning Commission. The first one is 100 Newton Bridge Road, and it's a rezoning from industrial to employment office plan development. The location's on Newton Bridge Road at the corner of Dairy Pack Road. It's also across from Paradise Boulevard. This is the aerial photograph. It's also known as the project's called General Time. It was the old General Time Westclox facility. There's a newer addition, as you can see on the northern side there, that Terrapin's using for some more housing. The future land use employment center would remain. The zoning would change to EOPD. The parcel is about 35 acres, and there's several uses possible: multifamily residential, a hotel, retail, restaurant, as well as some manufacturing type uses, and then event space. Also, there's several uses listed in the application report. We have a site plan. You can see the proposed multifamily in the northwest corner, a couple of buildings there along Newton Bridge Road, and then we have a possible hotel along Dairy Pack Road on the south side. Terrapin, as well as a future Wayfair call center, is in the northern part of the project, and the old industrial facility will be broken up into 4 distinct areas. This backside here would be possible to have the light manufacturing distribution center type uses, where the front would be used more for all of it could be used for retail and office. Those aren't restricted as the manufacturing is to the back. But you could have the retail and office up front, as well as the event space. You can see a little amphitheater type area in the southwest corner. There are several requested waivers. There's not a lot of tree canopy out there now, and they're going to have to remove some of that. So that's one of the waivers. But all in all, in the end, they would meet the total planted canopy requirement. The EO district has a residential maximum percentage of the overall development, which is 20%, and that's to make sure that residential remains somewhat accessory to the primary industrial use of the property. And in this case, they've asked for an increase to 35%. Several uses are not allowed in the EO zone, but they've been asked to be permitted with this plan development. And that includes a lot of the manufacturing type, distribution type uses. There's also some uses that have a 10,000 square foot size restriction. And again, I think primarily this comes from the EO being a primarily employment type district. So, but the retail would be normally limited to 10,000 square feet. They've asked for up to 100,000 square feet, as well as restaurant up to 65,000 square feet. And then finally, the multifamily in a industrial area is limited to 3 acres for block size, and their block size is about 5 acres. We have some architecture. This is the proposed multifamily building type architecture. And then the hotel. And then some elevations, potential elevations of the rest of the industrial facility. Some perspective renderings as well have been provided. So the Planning Commission is recommending approval. There's just one condition, and maybe I can explain that here. We had the multifamily up front And then we have the distribution centers, food processing, and so forth. So perhaps some pretty good trucking uses back in this area, back in the area of the development. And so therefore they'll be going on some of these driveways by the multifamily in the front. So therefore we're trying to look out for, I guess, the future residents of the area. They thought about a condition to restrict such trucking between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. in that northern driveway area. So that concludes the staff report.
Thanks, Rick. And this is in District 3. So Commissioner Link.
Yes, this is a really exciting project that's been a long time coming. I believe, this was first proposed probably my first year on the commission and 5 or 6 years ago. And I'm happy to see the Planning Commission gave it a unanimous thumbs up. The project has kind of morphed over the years to include that kind of workforce residential. They're really envisioning a kind of live-work environment for some of those residents. There's a lot of potential for employment. That Wayfair is bringing in a few hundred jobs. And also Terrapin's expansion brought in even more jobs. So it's a really transformative project for this corridor that's kind of been forgotten. And, this is the corridor that was kind of the inspiration for our TAD program. So there's potential for some TAD involvement in this as well. So I'm eager to see that TAD committee get up and running so that those discussions can start. But yeah, I'm really excited about this project. I think that it's going to really transform that side of town and really invigorate the community. The further west community in the Vincent Drive area, or I guess that's north.
Other
Anyone?
Input? Commissioner Myers?
I had the great opportunity to listen to this presentation and discussion in the planning committee as I was driving on I-85. And so I was really glad to see the visuals now because I just had to put it all into my head there. The planning department is suggesting a denial, like they did a denial of this, and really it seemed like the big question that was discussed by the planning commission members was the flex, the amount of space that's left in the project that's still flexible and unknown. And the planning department seemed concerned that there was too much unknown in that. In the end, it seemed that the planning commission was like, this is something new, this is something different. We have to see how the developers have to see what's going on with the economy and the market, and we have to take a chance. And so the question in my mind, or the debate in my mind, was, were we willing to take that chance and go with this? Which clearly the planning commission wanted to take that chance and go forth with this. And so I was looking forward to this discussion to see what other people on this commission thought about that.
Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Denson and Houle.
This looks great. Look forward to it.
Commissioner Denson.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I was actually, my wife and I went over to Greenville, South Carolina, often compared to Athens at times and stuff, a couple of weeks ago. And actually, right before we left, actually went to a new development extremely like this that was still under construction but had just opened, that was based on an old mill, but they were building off of it, building hotel space, and almost the entire thing was kind of developed intentionally, I think, with that flex space, like Commissioner Myers talked about. And, is there like a little bit of risk there? I guess that something like that shouldn't belong kind of pops up there. But I think that would be very rare that some kind of business owner would take the chance to open up their business in a place like this. I think they'll read the room and, before they would sign a lease on, make sure that it actually fit the market and the actual project there. And I think this project has been pretty well designed and fleshed out so that people kind of know what they're getting into. So I do think it is good that we're taking this step, this risk a little bit, that the Planning Commission said, and this is a little bit different. And so I'm looking forward to it. I bringing up the TAD, I think it's a good point that's in here, and I would like us to, as we move forward with this, possibly talk to these folks about having an affordable housing component maybe incorporated into this, especially maybe using some of that TAD funding, like what we see is a potential project on Lexington, that we can make sure that this expansion here, this housing that's coming in here, we can also have some of that as dedicated affordable moving forward.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, generally, I like this. Kind of piggybacking off what Commissioner Denson was saying, one thing I think would be good for us to do is to try to, perhaps negotiate some kind of a community benefits agreement with the developer here with regards to affordable housing. And also I see that, daycare is an allowed use. I'm curious if a child care center has been discussed explicitly as being part of this. And insofar as it has or hasn't, I guess, having it stipulated that it would be an affordable child care center, if there's a way for us to say, in exchange for this rezone, that we can get an affordable space for a child care center to be set up. I think that would be a really valuable use of part of this space, and it's certainly a dire need we have in this community, along with the housing.
I'm gonna, in a moment, call on Commissioner Link, because I know she's talked to the applicant, but I'll share that probably dating back to around the same time you referenced, Melissa, I've had conversations with them. And so, of course, community benefits are explicitly part of the TAD process. And so the prospect of affordability around childcare or affordability around units would sort of most closely align with that program. And I do know that if there was passage of this rezoning, that would be exactly what would happen, that this developer would approach us for a discussion of prospect of TAD funds for exactly that purpose. But part of really the rationale for the existence of the program is for things that benefit the community. And I'll say just very broadly, while historically, you've had this side of Newton Bridge Road that has been, light industrial manufacturing. You've had the other side of Newton Bridge Road, Town Square, everything along Cathwood that's been residential. And I see the potential development here as really benefiting all of those users with new trail access, new amenities, potentially even some streetscape improvements that are going to mean slower and safer traffic in the area. So I'm excited about all those prospects. But Commissioner Link, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to you.
Yeah, I that's what I foresee too, is having those discussions about more extensive community benefits in that TAD conversation. That's where we do have the leverage. And I just want to remind everyone that the tax revenue generated from the transformation of this property is going to be really significant. So it will really benefit the TAD and any other projects throughout that district. In seeing this move forward. There was one weird kind of concern the developer had about signage. We have a pretty stringent sign ordinance that is not really conducive to a big contained destination project like this. They really would like some leeway on that. And from what I understand, they weren't allowed to incorporate it into the PD process. So I'd like some clarification from staff on how they go about making that request to be able to incorporate that kind of, you can see it in the renderings in the presentation, that kind of rooftop signage that says general time, which I think is totally appropriate for a project like this. Our sign ordinance is really written for corridors where you have smaller properties right next to each other, and that kind of intrusive signage can really block other properties. But I feel like that kind of destination-oriented signage is perfectly appropriate for something like this. So if staff can please offer some clarity on what they need to do to see to it that they can make that request.
Yeah, I'll be glad to answer that. So zoning is part of Title IX, and so therefore all the zoning standards that you guys see for variances and waivers come from Title IX. The only other one would be the tree management ordinance, which is tied into zoning district as well. And it's mentioned, those two ordinances are mentioned in the zoning ordinance. Signs and environmental areas, other variances that go along those things, they aren't in the purview of the Planning Commission, so they go to the hearings board. Okay. So we've seen a lot of sign variances for signs on top of buildings or close to the top of buildings, especially hotels. They tend to like to have the signage up towards the top, and they just make an individual case. That they have a hardship. Some hotels have received it, some have not. They just look at it on a case-by-case basis as far as a hardship of the property. The other thing would be a text amendment. We've been looking a while at redoing our sign ordinance for various reasons. We have some conflicts and so forth, and to make sure it's up to date on legal code. And so that'd be another way would be a text amendment, and to look at that for a countywide basis. So those one of those options.
And I will say that there have been some kind of other related sign requests over the last couple of years, and so I'd be happy to assign that task to a committee or to the Planning Commission.
Okay. And I also wanted to mention that there's been a significant amount of environmental remediation that the developer has had to undertake to move forward with this project. So, there's definitely that benefit too, and it's also impacted the profit overhead. That was a pretty costly process. So this project has changed a little bit, and I think the players have changed a little bit, but overall, it's a really cool project, and it's going to offer that. It backs up to Sandy Creek Park, so there is real potential for this connectivity with the kind of recreational activity going on in this project, and potential for recreational activity leading out to Sandy Creek and the Greenway, if you can get across the river. So this is really something that can be a real catalyst for many future improvements to the area.
Thanks, Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. I think the points earlier about the TAD are well taken as a point of leverage, and I guess I just want to, make sure that we acknowledge that we have leverage here too in giving a rezone. And the other thing I'm curious of, if anyone's had discussion already, is we just talked about that multi-use path last week that was going to go right up to here, right up to Dairy Pack Road, potentially the Athens in Motion recommendation. I'm curious if there's been any discussion with the developer about perhaps contributing to that, or at least to the portion of roadside that would be kind of right in front of this development that extends past Dairy Pack Road, in a way that would align with that design.
They're required to complete that sidewalk frontage. I'm looking at the wrong.
But the design we got in the work session went,
and they
well beyond what a required sidewalk does.
Yeah, they specifically asked me about the Barber Street connectivity, so they're very interested in assuring that this has all that bike connectivity infrastructure. As we go out for public input on that Barber Street bike project, I have a feeling these guys will be participating in that. So they are certainly very bike centric in assuring that this project is completely accessible by bike and bus. I believe there's a bus improvement aspect of this, a bus stop improvement aspect of this.
So is a multi-use path built into this proposal?
I haven't dug that far into the plan, but that was implied by the conversation because they inquired about the connectivity. So I'll have to dig further into the presentation, and but from the beginning, that's always been that's always been kind of implied in the project, that this was going to be a fully bike accessible project. That was kind of how the conversation even started when they presented this 6 years ago.
There's an image of a cyclist about 2/3 of the way through there.
Yeah, I thought I saw some
presentation in front of the
renderings that indicated that.
Maybe we can
If you look
clarify,
on
Commissioner
page-
Denson.
Yeah, so if you look on page 46 with the site plan and look as Paradise Boulevard goes down that dog leg, you'll see it has an arrow and it says future connection to Sandy Creek Natural Center and proposed Greenway Trail. I guess I do have a question of how binding that language is. I mean, it is on the site plan, correct? So, I mean, I would.
Yeah, I mean, the site plan is binding.
Yeah, so I would.
Yes.
So, I mean, that language is there of, future connection.
That's not the roadside, right? That's to that.
If you look where Paradise Boulevard comes down and then goes past the water tower, there's an arrow on page 46 of the agenda item. I'm not sure what it is on the big, large package.
Okay.
That dog leg has an arrow and it has that language there saying future connection to Sandy Creek Natural Center, proposed Greenway.
And I found the narrative I was looking for. It's in their report under pedestrian and bicycle circulation.
Right.
The 10-foot wide shared use path is proposed along the Newton Bridge frontage as an extension of the approved ACC Chase and Barber Street improvements.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my impression, from discussions years ago that was their intent.
Commissioner Myers?
If I read that correctly, they also talk a lot about the whole project on Barber Street from Prince Avenue all the way down there as being a multi-use path. So it would be, we haven't finalized what we're doing there, and right now it's not a multi-use path. So it would make sense for whatever they do to connect with what we're doing, and that would be wonderful, because as a cyclist, if we do go with what was presented to us, which was the two-way bike highway, or whatever we're going to call it there, to have that continue on, or versus going over to a multi-use path would not be a smooth connection for cyclists. So maybe there can be some discussion about making whatever they have there match with what we end up deciding upon.
All right. Any other input on this? All right. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. All right. We're going to move on to item 27, which is 255 and 295 Research Drive.
Okay, this is a request to change the future land use designation as well as the zoning for multifamily development. The location map shows the two properties on Research Drive. In the arrow view, this area will still show the building on the property, which has since been removed. So it's basically undeveloped property. Just some nearby offices, as well as the Seasons nearby across the street. Right now we do have an employment future land use that would change to mixed density residential. The zoning would change to mixed density residential with a condition for the binding site plan that's being offered. So the site plan shows 28 dwelling units, which is about 84 bedrooms. There is one driveway access. That's all that's required for the size of development. And staff did find that there is compliance with all the zoning standards, so this does not have any variances or waivers. The site plan that was provided. And just to back up a second, the only other condition was relating to the fire vehicle access, and they show backup space here. The fire marshal says that may need to be changed, modified. So in the end, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the future land use change and a couple of conditions. The site plan, which is the voluntary condition, shall be binding, and then vehicle turnaround to make sure it meets the fire code. So that concludes the staff report.
Thanks, Rick. And this is in Allison's district.
It is. Thank you, Rick, for that presentation. I hope that you guys will read the report and get any inquiries or questions to me. The applicant reached out to me today, and I let him know I was take notes and as well as pass things on to them in respect to it. I think this is a good fit for this area. There was some corporate headquarters on Research Road that have since, I think, a for sale sign there. I think it is having the multi-family parts in there is a good fit. And it could have up to 103 beds, so it's lower in density than that. And it's also a great connectivity because Barnett Shoals, as we know, is a big connector and it's a complete street. And then College Station on the other end of Research is almost nearly a complete street. And then that gives a lot of connectivity and desirability, I think, for residential for this area. And I guess if I could get some clarification on the planning department's approval for the future land use, but yet the denial for the rezone. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So right now the future land use doesn't match up with the zoning, and it's really sort of isolated for that area. And I think I'd heard at one point it was potentially a UGA research type area, research park area, and that never really panned out. So there is an employment future land use, and actually that doesn't meet the current zoning of commercial. And I think it had to do with the OI, as I understand it, became the CO. And anyway, so, but right now the future land use doesn't match up with either zoning, the proposed existing or the proposed zoning. So we were in favor of at least changing the future land use back to match the current zoning. Whether we agree with the zoning or not, the future land use should be compatible for the area and the zoning. So we were trying to keep, we were okay with the future land use change. We did on the zoning, we just felt like, there was a non-residential use up to a few years ago. There's non-residential uses in the area. We've seen a lot of multi-family dwellings, and so we're a bit concerned about, whether we're building a bubble there. So, this was sort of a light denial. It's a small complex, and not that it doesn't fit in with the area, but we feel like there's still some possibility of commercial use. So there was one, I should say there was an 8-1 vote because one of the planning commissioners did agree that she thought maybe a commercial use was viable here as well. So it was, let's see, get that. It was a 7-1 vote.
Okay. And then could you put up the map again that shows us the surrounding properties? Because I felt like it was what they're asking for matches the surrounding.
Is this the one? Or? Is this the correct map?
Yeah, so that shows the properties across the street and next door, and then the kind of backyard ones that front on carriage. Or
so the left is what it's currently zoned. Is that right, Bruce? And then the right is what they're asking for.
Right. Yes, that's correct. It's COPD now, and that PD seemed to stem from the old research facility that was formerly on the site. And you do have this RM2 faces Barnett Shoals. These apartment complexes here face towards Barnett Shoals. This I believe is a Georgia Power substation.
Yeah, that's kind of an undesirable thing. So that's what makes me encouraged that this site could actually get a better use of it. And look across the street where all those housing units are. I'm wondering why shouldn't that have a residential zone to that?
Those are the Seasons condominiums, and that's also a planned development. Now, they were put in some years, I think, they may have been before our current ordinance. I wasn't here. I don't think those were built, but it is a commercial office plan development. And I think there's another office building or so associated with those condos, sort of a mixed use development. Then we have offices, as you mentioned, one at least being vacant across the street. We have the regional commission on this side. But
Right.
yeah, it would be the only RM. And I shouldn't say that. Right now, I mean, surrounding it on Research, but there is one just off view here. There's another apartment complex on the other side of the Regional Commission. I don't know. Maybe I can show that a little wider.
Yeah, the packet shows a lot of images. Just for your that one does it. That does it.
Yeah.
So that shows the amount of residential and multifamily units within this vicinity. So it's not the first one to do that, and I think that the commercial is going out versus improving. But that's just my opinion. So, what other questions people have for Bruce, I think and I'll answer whatever I can. And then I'll also be glad to contact the applicant if you guys want to email me information you want me to get clarification on.
All right.
Or ask me.
I had a question really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So looking at the packet from planning, it does seem like, and also quick aside, I lost internet briefly, so if anything I bring up came up already, I'm very sorry for the redundancy. I am back now. But I was curious about the fact that it does seem like these plans are, significantly beneath the density that is allowed for the zoning that they are requesting. And I was wondering if any opportunity had been taken to speak with the developer about the potential to perhaps increase the density in order to get some affordable housing at the site. I know it may be not ideal with regards to it, like pedestrian accessibility to amenities, things like grocery stores, etc. But it does seem like it's within a quarter mile, I think, of like a bus stop, which is similar to what people like in, I think, Patrick's district already face over on like Snapfinger Drive, etc., with regards to accessing public transit. And so that could be something that would be attractive to folks who are seeking out affordable housing. It just seems like it's nice that there's all this extra green space and, this nice lawn and, the landscaping between the buildings. But part of me feels like it could be a wasted opportunity for us to get, to take advantage of that extra space and slightly increasing the density here in order to get some community benefits there. So I didn't know if any conversation had been had around that, or if there were other considerations in play that may not be spelled out clearly in the packet, or based on previous discussions that have been had that sort of precluded that from being a part of discussions around this particular development.
Yeah. Yes, I can answer some of that at least. The applicant made it pretty well clear that these will be 3-bedroom, 3-bath units for students being close to UJ campus. However, there was talk about, with the Planning Commission, there was even a talk about making it single-family attached units for sale. And they went over a few ideas like that, but in the end, the applicant just presented his case. He disclosed there would be student apartments. Certainly, you certainly can talk to him about if he's interested in the affordable part of it. But that's just there was discussion. There was discussion about making them 1-story rather than 2-story. We don't have binding architecture. He said they would be similar to the Seasons across the street, but it's just a binding site plan. There was talk about 1-story as far as.
You're talking about Research Drive, right? Yeah,
the Seasons across the street. So.
Okay. Yeah. Some of the things you were mentioning sound really different from what was in the narrative provided by the developer for this project. And so it's just I was just making sure I was reading the right project. But yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please go on.
These were just some Planning Commission ideas that they approached with the applicant.
Okay.
They consider single-family attached. They consider 1-story buildings. So they proposed certain ideas. In the end, it got approved the way it was drawn up. And as I mentioned, we don't have binding architecture. It's just a site plan. But he made it clear he was thinking about 2 stories, like with the Seasons.
Yeah.
Three bedroom, 3 bath.
Commissioner Wright, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, until we have a designated third-party entity that is committed and that we can pay to validate and verify and take on that process for the affordable housing, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to explain to an applicant.
Yeah. I mean, and with that, I mean, I think that's a separate.
You're breaking up.
On getting that part of our. Can you all hear me?
Not very well. I wonder if you could video off it. We could hear the volume.
Let me try that. Yeah. Can you all hear me?
That sounds much better.
Cool. I'm on like a hotspot on my using my phone for internet since I don't have it set up in my new house, so that makes sense. But separate but important discussion I think that you bring up, Commissioner Wright, is the missed opportunities that delaying on getting that mechanism worked out with housing partners, so that, you know, if this land gets developed, it's probably developed forever. So moving quickly and, you know, thoughtfully about how to make that work so that we can capture these opportunities as they arise. But yeah, I totally understand. But I will be giving some consideration to whether I like the project in general as it is. But, you know, whether or not it's the best use of the property, given that the small footprint, with the small footprint, we may be losing out on a chance to bring more community benefits to the area.
Right. And I would just encourage everybody to read that they did pull in the planning department history of different opportunities that came and went from this site. So it's been taken out on a few dates, but it hasn't really gotten a commitment. So I think this might be the first it's come along. Is that right, Bruce?
Well, we have, I guess a while back, we had another similar request for larger development. I did want to mention the topo in the back of the property really drops down a lot towards the creek in the back. So they're trying to keep the development on top of the hill, basically, and not go down the bank there. So.
Yeah, and they're doing a good job of respecting the riparian buffer, and there's a lot of visuals in the packet that bring that to light.
So, I guess to follow up on that, as I'm kind of cruising through the packet right now, I may have missed that. So is that why the density is so much lower than what's allowable in this zoning? Because of the topography and trying to protect that riparian buffer?
Well, I can say that's maybe the reason why they squeeze the development up towards the top of the property, because of the topography. I mean, they certainly can go higher. They're not at the maximum height. But like you said, there's more density that could be provided. But their plan is to be, they mentioned the seasons a lot as being their sort of model of how they want to develop this property.
Commissioner Myers?
I just wanted to clarify what the intent for this is. And I know that we can't really know what it is going to be and who's going to rent them. But I know that planning had just referred to this as student housing, and maybe they did bring that up. Again, I listened to this discussion and I didn't hear that discussion go in with student housing. They are saying in here that their goal population, whether or not that actually happens, is young professionals, and that there's a condo association. There are 28 units with 3 bedrooms in there. Whether, I don't know enough about housing to know if that's going to draw in students. It doesn't have the kind of amenities that student housing has. It doesn't have the affordable housing, but it did sound to me like the kind of housing that I referred to, like Patrick and me on the east side looking for a place to live, where you'd have professionals, retirees, and such. So I was hoping that this was not going to be a student housing development.
Yeah, I would want to chime in real quick to just echo that, and that I was just a little confused when Richard was talking and comparing some of what he said to what is presented in the proposed use narrative provided by the applicant, referring to small families, non-students, young professionals, et cetera. And that's kind of what drew my interest more in seeing how affordable housing can be worked in if this is once again going to be a student-oriented development.
Well, I think the 3-bedroom, 3-bath sort of convinced the Planning Commission it was going to be student-oriented development, as well as the mention of the quick access to UGA and the Greenway for bike riding and so forth from this site. So we've done. I mean, it's something, again, we cannot get into occupancy. We can't say it's going to be student, it's going to be owner, it's going to be rental, it's going to be condo, it's going to be young families. Outside of brick and mortar, there's nothing binding about this. So we've seen a lot of projects where they try to get families in. I can mention a few of them right downtown, and end up being student rentals. So, if they want to do small families, best of luck to them. But where it's located, the market's, there's going to be a lot of calls from students, I imagine. So,
Melissa?
I was under the impression that this was more of a, family, young professional, retiree type development and not student. And, it's townhomes. And I feel like we've got a real lack of townhomes in this community. I mean, you can bring the price point down on a home when you have a townhome significantly. So you could get some of that kind of missing middle family housing that we're really lacking, folks, and this might relieve some of the pressure on some of our lower income or moderate income in-town neighborhoods if it were that kind of housing. But, there is, once something goes student, it's like build it and they will come. So I am, a little leery now that, we're talking about this being intended to be a student project. I feel like there's a market for this for families and regular working folks in this location. I mean, just because it's near the Greenway and close to UGA doesn't mean it's all conducive to students, because there's plenty of people who work at UGA that really would like to live in a place like this. So I'm a little, I don't know. I mean, it would be nice if we could get a couple of affordable units, dedicated affordable units out of it. But then again, we don't have that agreement with a nonprofit that can oversee this. We really have not gotten ahead of this ball in this development, in general, and having that set process to engage these developers on the front end in that conversation.
Just as a kind of overriding process, because it's come up a couple of times, just want to remind everybody there's a inclusionary zoning working group, and so Commissioners Nedson and Parker are on that group, and so we'll be seeing that come to light this year. Commissioner Houle, and then back to Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm glad we're mentioning that working group. I really hope that group will convene very soon. My understanding was the first ask of them was to make a recommendation for a position so we could begin to fund someone to do that work. I mean, it seems pretty crucial that we have at least that part figured out while we're still working out the inclusionary zoning policies. I personally feel like, this development is among many where I'm not like inherently opposed to it, happening there, but I feel like there needs to be an affordable component. I mean, we have an affordable housing crisis in this community, and where we actually get a chance to address it a bit as a body is when we have developments come before us and developers asking for something from us, and we can, ask for that in return. And so absent the greater policy goals that we're hopefully going to complete later this year, tackling these developments ad hoc to get something seems crucial. And I don't, when we're talking about who's going to live here, I think Mr. Cowick's point, which echoes everyone else from the planning department I've heard when they come to us, they say over and over again, like, it doesn't matter who they tell us they're expecting to live there. Like, that can change for a variety of reasons. That's, from the market on down to how they decide to redesign it. But what we can do is address, the income ranges of at least some of the folks who will live there. And whether we're talking about students or seniors or, working families, there are low-income people in all of those demographics who need housing. There are low-income students who need housing. So even if this becomes student housing, not all students are wealthy. So I really would like to see us try to craft some way forward where this development could have that kind of an agreement built into it.
Commissioner Myers?
I have a much more mundane comment than Commissioner Hool's. I do the thing that makes me suspicious about this in terms of not going to the young families, professionals, and retirees is the three bathrooms, and that kind of bothers me. So why are there 3 bed? It'd be good faith here to only have 2 bathrooms or 2.5 bathrooms. The 3 bathrooms just seems like it invites the student. Let's get 3 students in there. So I don't know about the rest of the world, but I don't need 3 bedrooms when I buy this as the healthy, vibrant retiree. 2 bathrooms would do fine. So anyway, that's just my little comment to the developer, who I'm sure is listening.
Commissioner Hool?
Yeah, I just have one other kind of technical question for Richard. With the kind of recommendation to approve the first thing here from employment center to mixed density residential, but then deny the second, if we were to match what one of the planning commissioners suggested in their vote, what would that enable?
No, you would just be amending the future land use map, and so the zoning would remain the same.
Okay.
So if anybody needed such a special use permit or something like that, the zoning would already match up with the future land use. So it'd be, it could be a type 2 rather than a type 1 process, that type of thing. Eventually next year or so, we're hoping to have a future land use plan before you guys. And, probably some of these areas that are just anomalies, we'll probably try to clean up some of these areas anyway. But this was just one that didn't match anything around it, any use around it. And so it's like, well, it's hard to deny a future land use change actually makes sense, but the zoning, we just had some disagreement with, so.
And when you said a type 2 versus a type 1 process, is that like a cheaper process for someone in the future?
Yeah, type 1, you change the future land use map and the zoning map. So this was a type 1. It had to wait 90 days before it went to the planning commission, so it's a longer process. It usually takes about 4 or 5 months as opposed to 2 or 3 months. So and a little bit more fee, those type of things. But just maybe a little bit of an aside, I guess, but it is difficult if you are in a student area, a close-in area, to not have 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, and charge $1,000 a bedroom. That's the economics of it. It's just really tough to get around. So that's just want to throw that out there. That's why they're going to look for students rather than families if they can. But if they we can't hold them to the report, but if they want to try to get families, that's great. Again, we can't really get involved in that, rental, but who they sell to, who they rent to. But I keep thinking about it, as I keep hearing about $1,000 a bedroom for students, and that's just really hard to tell somebody don't do that. Unless you have some teeth, it's hard to say, please don't rent out to students, because that's just a hard one to not do.
All right. More on this in a couple of weeks. All right. We're going to move on to 252 Georgia Drive.
Okay. 252 Georgia Drive is a special, it's a special use in RM2. Sorry, we have a PD number there, but this is a special use because of multi-family and airport overlay. The hatched area is the airport zone. You can see the subject property location outlined there. The aerial photograph very, dense areas. This is Cars Hill, lots of small lots, duplexes and multifamily. So mixed-use residential future land use would remain. The zoning would remain RM2. It says a special use because there's a house currently there, and they're adding a duplex. So we consider 3 dwellings on the same property as multifamily. Even as just a duplex, it would have to go through special use. The total would, so we have 1 duplex with 6 total bedrooms, and then we have existing structure with 3, so 9 bedrooms altogether. Parcels a little bit less than half an acre. Future land use would remain. The site plan, the existing house faces Georgia Drive. This is a through lot to Oconee Street, and the duplex would face Oconee Street. It'd be a side-by-side up and down duplex. We have a gravel parking area, which is okay for the small size of the parking lot. It would need to be edged. And also, the driveway does go through. It is shared, a shared driveway easement to the next door property. The architecture that was provided for the duplex. And then just some examples of some houses up on Cars Hill. The one on the bottom here, this 2-story is almost directly across the street from the subject property. So this is a case where the Airport Authority recommended denial. It goes to the Airport Authority for their advice, their recommendation. And the airport director did appear before the Planning Commission and answer questions, about the Airport Authority's recommendation. And they understood. I think he made it pretty clear why the Airport Authority had their recommendation, and what their role is as far as protecting the airport and the surrounding environs. And the Planning Commission, really appreciated that. In the end, it was a split vote. It was 5-3. It was a close vote. The Planning Commission felt like the Airport Authority did its job as they were supposed to do, but that they felt like zoning-wise, this property or this proposal was compatible with the rest of the development up on Cars Hill, and they felt like it wasn't different, it wasn't taller, so forth. It wasn't the runway protection zone, which is closer to the airport. You guys had a few months ago an apartment complex right off the runway approach zone, which is a lot more critical area. So they felt like this being beyond the loop, further away, that they would recommend approval. And I don't want to put, I don't want to try to answer for the airport director, but I would encourage you, to contact Mike Matthews, the director, for if you have any further explanation needed for that recommendation, or to watch the video on YouTube, because he did do a very good job of presenting those reasons. It is still an approach zone, a takeoff and runway approach or flight path over this development. So there's always a chance of accident. So it was a close one. It was a tough vote. Staff went along with the airport, and the Planning Commission went with approval. That concludes the staff report.
Thanks, Rick. And this is in District 4 and Commissioner Wright's district as well.
Yeah, you guys are getting to know the ends of my district, kind of, and in between. This, I don't know how to contact the applicant. I guess maybe I could get an email from Rick, but I wanted to follow up on the stormwater management and the concerns that were there and it not being addressed. Or Rick, did you have something you could add on that specific topic?
Yes, I did speak with the project engineer, Ed Lane. He does feel confident that he can do something, perhaps underground. There's a new 1-inch runoff reduction rule that's recently come into effect, and I think the Public Works Department wants to make sure that all the applicants now, the recent applicants, are understanding that rule. It's different than before. It used to be, you can't run off more than before pre and post construction. It has to be the same, but now it's a one-off introduction. So there's going to be a little bit more stormwater management involved. But Ed Lane does feel like, and certainly he can answer for this, but he assured me when I talked to him that he can make this work. And So he wants to proceed with it, and he will amend the plan to show the stormwater, to the satisfaction of Public Works Department.
Okay. And I would encourage everybody, Georgia Drive is parallel to Oconee Street or Oak Street, where Oconee is up in Cards Hill at that point. And there are some examples that I do not want to replicate, and I don't think this follows in line with that, where there's double stacked houses and the drainage towards Georgia Drive is terrible. They've just got like, what do you call the black pipe that's corrugated? French drains. They're just running off of the property down the road, down into the street. So the stormwater, I think, wasn't as we weren't checking on that the same as we do now. This area is becoming more and more desirable for a lot of reasons, and the Greenway is a lot of it, as well as Dudley Park. When we get through the cemetery with the Greenway, that's also helping this area. The fact that this property goes on Georgia Drive at a way that the property that's existing there, the older house, I think the 30s, is a touch of the character of the past that was there. Georgia Drive has that. Oconee Street is losing it on the back side, but my concern is that the property owner might tear down the old house and do something else in the middle of it. So let me know. I'll get what I need to contact the applicant, and if we need to delay it, Rick, did you think we needed to delay it for that stormwater part to be part of what we were looking at?
Well, I think just a condition. This is a special use. So one thing about special uses is if they can't work it out, special use permit will just go away. It's not like a rezoning, but the applicant Ed Lane, he's with Smith Planning Group. So, but I'll send you his contact information. But yeah, I mean he's an engineer, and he's assured us, the Planning Commission staff, that he can get that worked out. Again, there may be some underground. They've done some underground facilities before. But he's just confident about that, and he wanted to proceed forward. And again, special use permits, for some reason, whatever reason, whether it's public stormwater or something else, if the duplex doesn't get built, it'll expire. The permit will just go away. So.
Thanks, Rick. Melissa.
I'm kind of curious, looking at the map and all these little triangles on all these small houses saying they're special use. So all these small, I guess, the small historic homes, what special use process did they go through? Can you enlighten?
Yeah, a lot of these are actually newer houses. They were.
Okay.
Yeah, the used to, before I think it's 2010, we started requiring acre lot sizes in the airport overlay. It used to be if you were just doing a new house on a small lot, you could go for a special use. And so there were subdivisions done in that area. A lot of, we saw a lot of it at one time there in that same area, just dozens of homes being built. And so those were prior to the latest airport ordinance revision. So now it's an acre lot size requirement.
This is another area where, this zoning, this RM2 zoning really incentivizes this kind of development, yet it's in the airport overlay zone that doesn't. We had a similar thing on Lexington Highway or not long ago. I mean, in reconsidering the land use plan, I really think we need to look at these areas and downzone them to a zoning that's appropriate for their location in the airport overlay. It would also de-incentivize the demolition of the smaller historic homes into these tall student-oriented duplexes. It's really a shame what's happened on Carrs Hill, and it's really been incentivized by that RM2 zoning. I don't disagree that this proposed project is compatible with the surrounding development, because that's exactly what's happening on Carrs Hill. You're getting student-oriented 2-story duplexes.
Patrick?
I'd like to piggyback off Commissioner Link's comment, but also after watching the Planning Commission video, can you elaborate on some of the concerns that some of the Planning Commission members had about masking and the size and how this duplex is not going to complement the houses in the surrounding area?
Yeah, there were some commissioners that felt, that the massing was a bit wider. Perhaps some of the houses, and maybe I don't know if I could share another view here. You can see the building footprints in the area. Go back here for a second. So some of them felt like a lot of the buildings that have been built, especially recently on these smaller lots, that the depth is greater than the width. And in this case, this site plan, now still the depth is greater than the width, but they felt like the width of the building was greater than other houses around it. So that was one thing. The height, there is the one building across the street, but they were saying how one shouldn't set the pattern. Some of those were, disagreeing, said that a lot of the houses, took some pictures. A lot of the houses around it are 1 story, and they just felt like the 1 or 1.5 story that this one house here, which was a special use as well, should not have set the pattern for the neighborhood. So, all in all, they're meeting the zoning standard, and so we do have some 2 stories in the neighborhood. So it was just a matter of disagreement among Planning Commission members. Some of them felt it was too big, some felt it was okay for the neighborhood.
Others? Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, actually, Patrick and I really had the same question there, and I after some of the comments that Commissioner Link made, it makes me wonder if the planning commissioners were also reacting to that other development that was going on in the area that was so clearly sort of student-driven, or the new development in other streets, because I was trying to figure that out as well, how this project would be so much larger than the other ones. But I guess it's because it's a full 2-story and not the 1.5 or single story, but I'll go over and check that out.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to drive down Georgia Avenue, which has got the existing house, and see how that changes, and then take Kent or one of the side streets up and see the street front of Oconee Street, and you'll see the example that we don't want to replicate. Some of those little units that Commissioner Link pointed out with the triangle on them, they have one driveway for like 4 of those buildings with just a huge cement pad in the middle, and that's where this runoff goes down the French drain, down the embankment so they don't even go to Georgia Drive. So this one, the 2 units would at least have their own street front and access. They still have the stone steps that go down to Georgia Drive and the mailbox on that front side where So just take a look at it. Send me any questions that you might have and inquiries that we can get cleared up about this. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to go over there and enjoy the Greenway while you're at it and the Rails to Trail.
All right. Moving on to 29, which is 1015 Macon Highway.
Okay, this one you saw just a few months ago. It was rezoned to CN, and there was a condition which was a carryover from earlier zoning actions on this property. And so it's back again to amend that condition. The location is on Macon Highway. This is the River Club Apartments, the old Puritan Mill nearby. So location map here, they share an access with the apartments. Just an older type of picture. This house has been used for a residence, as you can see, the original residential structure, as well as an office and a fraternity most recently. It is now unoccupied, and the proposal is they have submitted plans for a gin distillery. Just some aerial photographs of the property. So the concept plan, again, this isn't a binding plan. This isn't a binding proposal. It's just to amend a binding condition of zoning. There are other possible uses. They are pretty serious about the gin distillery. They have submitted plans for such a distillery. They're just waiting on this amendment to this condition. But wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't explain there are other possible uses, especially down the road if the distillery moves out and maybe it gets larger for its property or something. So, this other possibilities are retail, restaurant, and other uses in the CN zone. But we are here to the question of amending an existing zoning condition. Future land use would remain, the zoning would remain. So the existing condition says that the existing residential structure and the facade thereof shall be maintained on site. The recommended condition, and this is something staff actually crafted. One thing I want to show you before we get to that is the applicant provided some good research into the building. There have been a lot of changes made to the structure. So this was the original, as I understand it, the Puritan Mill supervisor's house. And so it's got a lot of historic character in the front. There have been a lot of modifications back of the building to the back and sides. So you can see the red here area is the original building still remaining. And then a lot of additions around that and around the back of it. So with that, the applicant agreed with this condition that the historic residential structure as existed prior to 1985, and that's the red area there, shall be maintained on the site, and all the currently visible exterior eastern, northern, and southern elevations of the two-story front massing shall remain unobscured. So there we're talking about this historic part here. They'll maintain the original middle. Obviously, the additions will stay. I did want to show, this is the reason why they're back here is because their bathroom is being added. So, they weren't able to basically modify the house at all with the current condition, but they need to add this bathroom for the gin distillery use. And so the condition would be to maintain this part and keep this part as it is now totally unobscured, just to keep that from being altered or added on to obscure the original structure. Just in case someday, if somebody wants to try to restore that original house. So that concludes the staff report.
Thanks, Rick. And this in District 10, Commissioner Hamby sent me a note that even though he wasn't able to attend tonight, he's favorable toward this amendment to the plan that, again, as Rick noted, you saw a couple months ago. Any other input on this? All right, everybody needs a bathroom. All right, final planning and zoning item is 610 Epps Bridge Parkway.
Okay, and this one hasn't been so recently, but you have, some of you may have seen this a few years ago for a driveway addition on Timothy Road. This is the Chestnut Grove Baptist Church, the corner of Epps Bridge and Timothy. And the church, in a good way, keeps growing. They keep expanding. And so they're back again for an addition to the special use. And so this is a property location at Timothy and Epps Bridge. The aerial, you can see the development is pretty much in the northern part. They have a long parcel down Epps Bridge Parkway, long frontage. And the future development would remain as single-family residential. The zoning would remain as with the special use permit. They also own this triangle piece here. This is where another driveway recently was punched through so they could get out on Timothy Road to the light. Just the overall plan, you can see how most of the property has remained undeveloped. And then the addition is just over, just right behind the current building, over some of the current parking area, the portico share in the back. some offices, a multi-purpose type addition. Architecture was provided, and because the land does slope away from Epps Bridge Parkway, it may not be that visible. Once we don't have a perspective rendering, but you might see some of the roof, but a lot of the building will actually be hidden on the current building and just the topo. So there's about 11 acres. And then we're here for a church building expansion. There's the bonding site plan architecture. The Planning Commission did recommend approval with a few conditions. The first condition actually was on the current ordinance for the special use. It just wasn't done. To combine the main parcel and the Timothy Road driveway parcel. And then 2 variances to continue. These were approved years ago, and they've just been carried forward every time. Because of the long frontage, they've asked to be exempt from street trees along the whole frontage of Epps Bridge. They don't plan on taking any of the trees down that way. So the street trees would just be for the part of the property developed. And then to waive cemetery buffering, there's a little cemetery lot in the corner. And so they wouldn't have to basically screen the church from the cemetery. And that concludes the staff report.
Thanks, Rick. This is also in District 10, and Commissioner Hamby noted that he was favorable toward this request as well. Any other input on this item? All right, everybody. Before we go, just a couple informational items. I think Manager Williams has one, and I have one as well. So, Manager Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. And would you mind giving me the ability to share?
I'm going to do that now.
Just real quick, asking for your help and that of the public. We get involved in these types of things from time to time, but we belong to Athens-Clarke County. Our employees belong to Engaging Local Government Leaders, ELGL. Josh has spent a lot of time in there. I've had a great interaction, and unlike these professional associations that only cater to me or Josh, all of our employees can belong to this, and it connects them to other employees across the country doing wonderful, really cool things. And that's how innovation's born. And so I bring this up in that Lori Lofton at Public Utilities, through an invitation from Josh and with help with Jeff Montgomery and Joseph and Sarah and others, entered us into this contest. ELGL has the NOPE Award, which is an annual award, and they have specified water facilities, water and sewer facilities. And so, Lori, as you know, if you've ever spent a Valentine's Day at Cedar Creek, it's a wonderful thing, and she is so on point. She submitted the Cedar Creek Water Reclamation Facility as a competitor, and you're looking at Assistant Manager Josh Edwards, who is a basketball nut. And so this whole thing is about March Madness. And we have been competing across the country for the nation's best water and sewer facility, and we are in the Elite 8 at this point. And I want to thank the mayor for doing a special video on this that really got us votes jacked up and got us in there, and Commissioner Davenport for plugging us in on his social media, and we're asking y'all to do the same. I'll just share this with you. Lori sent this over, a tardigrade, if you will, and there's a website you can see there at the bottom, ACCGov.com, NOPE, and we urge folks to vote. Josh, I think this runs through the weekend, the Elite 8, to get us to the Final Four. And Josh, we are neck and neck with Florence, Kentucky, that has this. I'm sorry, Commissioner Wright. But it's a big water tower. It says Florence, y'all, and it's they got a baseball team up there after that too. Certainly, we can beat those folks. And interestingly enough, out of all the places in America that's on the other side of Elite 8 from us, Winder, Georgia. So when you go in there, you can vote for Winder, and maybe it'll be Athens and Winder for the nation's best. So, Mayor, thanks for letting me say a few minutes on that.
Absolutely, thank you, Manager Williams. And mine is not nearly so interesting. commissioners have seen this already, but just for members of the public, the Lexington Tax Allocation District Advisory Group has been named, and that is May Walter, Dr. Chauncey Allen, Rhett Butler, Brantley Colbert, Shane Deagle, and Mac Duncan. So that is all we have this evening. And at 8:48, wish you farewell and great evening. Find something tasty.